everyone. Got Anna here strumming for us. Today is April 20th. We are going to talk about some reflections from the Prayer of Recollection. We're looking at Luke 22:54 through 63. So I am going to read that for us. Here we go. So they arrested him and led him to the high priest's home, and Peter followed at a distance. The guards lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat around it, and Peter joined them there. A servant girl noticed him in the firelight and began staring at him. Finally, she said, "This man was one of Jesus' followers." But Peter denied it. "Woman," he said, "I don't even know him." After a while, someone else looked at him and said, "You must be one of them." "No, man, I'm not," Peter retorted. About an hour later, someone else insisted, "This must be one of them because he's a Galilean too." But Peter said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." And immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. At that moment, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Suddenly, the Lord's words flashed through Peter's mind. "Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny me 3 times. Deny 3 times that you even know me." And Peter left the courtyard, weeping bitterly. The guards in charge of Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and said, "Prophesy to us. Who hit you that time?" And they hurled all sorts of terrible insults at him. So, I want to first kind of look at the first verse of the section 54.
I like that he calls him man all the time. Like, man?
Yeah. If you're a teenager, you read that a little differently.
I don't know, man.
She was reading it to me yesterday. She has a good, totally different inflection on that. And we also don't know why did he say that. Like if there was some literary...
Well, Jesus says woman sometimes.
Yeah, Jesus does say like woman sometimes like that. So, I think it's really ironic and interesting the way that God set this up. That the true high priest of the universe is brought to the home of the inept high priest to be judged. How's that for irony?
What does inept mean?
Inept means that you're like incapable, you're not fulfilling your function at all, you're just like lame.
It's a good word for him.
Yeah.
He's pretty lame.
He was, lame is a compliment compared to what he was. And then Peter, it's interesting, on his first denial, I asked myself, why didn't he stop here? Like, you'd think that after Jesus warned him, when he made his first denial, he would have been like, okay, that
Jesus,
Jim,
Jesus said to me. Like, yeah, that wasn't.
then
It made it sound like when he's done the third time to the Lord, the words flashed into his head like he hadn't been thinking about it.
yeah, so that is exactly right. That's kind of where I ended too, was that after the next 2 denials, it said that the Lord turned and looked at Peter like, whoa, that was intense. And suddenly the Lord's words flashed through Peter's mind, so I think he had forgotten.
It's just suddenly like it wasn't happening before.
Yeah, like, oh no, I remember now. And I mean, I think you can kind of get that. I mean, if I thought about that, like, if he was probably like confused, scared, completely taken aback, this was not what he was expecting, and he was not even thinking about that anymore. He was probably in preservation mode. Or even if I look at my own self, like when I have said, I'm not going to get fighty, I'm not going to be defensive. When I start feeling defensive, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to do welcoming prayer. And then if I need to, I'm going to do fast writing instead of going straight after it, knowing I feel defensive.
Me at eating.
What do you mean, Anna?
I never eat. I always forget.
Yeah, Anna gets a little hangry when she doesn't eat. We all do. Well, I do.
I got it from her.
She got it from me. She didn't get it from Michael.
Okay.
He's not so hangry.
Yeah. He eats one meal and then lasts him for days.
Pretty much. So, but I get that. Then, I get in the moment and I feel defensive and then I still get sucked into a fight. But I'm really working on that. God's been really, really helping me with that a lot recently.
Good.
Yeah, that's really good. And then, I thought the last thing that I was thinking about with this section was when Peter, when it says Peter left the courtyard weeping bitterly, and I think about
Poor Peter.
yeah, poor Peter and the pain that he felt in his own grief over his mistakes, and then that he had to go through watching the whole crucifixion and death, and then Jesus being dead for 3 days with this guilt weighing so heavily on him. Because when we read this story, we know that Jesus rises again, and we read Peter's part of that from the perspective of knowing what's going to happen. But Peter didn't see Peter's perspective that way. Peter just saw a dead Jesus that he had betrayed right in his worst hour.
You mean Peter had a different perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Peter had a different perspective than us. He didn't have our perspective. What did I say?
Peter had a different perspective than Peter's perspective.
Oh, yeah, that didn't make sense for him.
Did God make him do that? Let him do that?
Let him do what?
Why didn't God remind him? Like, how did God let him forget about the 3 times thing?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I even tell myself I'm not going to do things, and then I still do. Why do we forget and do the things that... Why do we not even think about our resolutions when we stomp all over them?
But he doesn't have a habit of denying Jesus. It's not like he's just like slipping back into the habit. He's like, but he doesn't even remember.
Yeah. I think he was like, also like I say, just caught up in the moment in fear, not thinking rationally. I don't know. If you guys have comments, you can let us know what you think about all that, because that's really interesting. But I do think about Peter after the resurrection, and remember when Jesus told Peter, when you repent and come back to me, strengthen your brothers. The power that the pain of this experience must have had in him that brought him back to become the man of God that he was. So amazing. And I just think that's awesome. I love the way you worked through this, Jesus. And I love that the Jesus that walked through all this with Peter and then with the abuse, that's the Jesus inside of us. And we praise you, Jesus.